It was a gray and rainy Monday morning in the quiet village of Elmswood, nestled on the outskirts of Oxfordshire. The streets were slick with fresh rain, the kind that made the old cobblestones shine. As always, 17-year-old James Whittaker took the same path to school, headphones in, hood up, avoiding eye contact with neighbors. He liked being invisible. But that morning something, or rather someone, caught his eye. Parked across the road, under the drooping branches of an ancient elm tree, was a small red car. Inside sat a girl, her face barely visible through the steamed-up windows. She was crying. Not the dramatic, noisy kind of cry. It was the quiet, gut-wrenching sort that made your chest tighten just from watching. James slowed down. He recognized her, Ellie Harper. She was in the same year at school, but they had never really spoken. She was popular, always surrounded by friends, always laughing. But not today. He hesitated. Should he go over? Say something? In the end, he just stared. Then, almost sensing his gaze, Ellie looked up. Their eyes met. She quickly wiped her face, forced a small smile, and mouthed the words, "I'm fine." James blinked. Just as he considered crossing the road, Ellie turned the key, and the red car rolled away, vanishing into the drizzle. All day at school, James could not focus. Ellie seemed perfectly normal in the corridors, joking with her friends as though nothing had happened. But James knew what he had seen. And no matter how hard he tried to forget, her eyes haunted him. That evening, he sat in his room, replaying the moment over and over. Something was wrong, and James had never been one to get involved in drama, but this felt different. He made a silent decision. He was going to find out what Ellie Harper was hiding. The next morning, James arrived at school earlier than usual. He waited near the back gate, the one Ellie always used when she drove. Sure enough, the little red car rolled in, perfectly on time. Ellie stepped out, adjusting her coat, her expression unreadable. James watched her from a distance, noticing how she greeted her friends with a wide smile, as though nothing had happened yesterday. He wanted to approach her, to ask if she was really okay. But how do you start that conversation? "Hey, I saw you crying in your car yesterday," hardly seemed like the right opening. So once again he said nothing. That afternoon, during free period, James found himself in the library. It was mostly empty, apart from a few students pretending to study. To his surprise, Ellie was there, sitting by the window, staring blankly at a book she was clearly not reading. He hesitated at the end of the aisle, heart pounding. Then, before he could change his mind, he walked over. "Hey," he said softly. Ellie looked up, startled. Her eyes widened slightly.
"Oh, hi."
"James, right?" He nodded.
"Yeah."
I saw you yesterday. In your car." There was a pause. Ellie's face shifted, just for a second. The smile faltered, and something else flickered in her eyes. Panic, maybe. But then it was gone. "Oh," she said, forcing a laugh. "That? Just a silly moment. I was fine." "Really?" James tilted his head. It didn't look fine. Another pause. Longer this time. Ellie closed the book. "Look, I appreciate the concern. But it's nothing, honestly. Everyone has bad days, right?" He nodded again, slower this time.
"Right."
"Just if you ever want to talk. I'm around." For a second, she said nothing. Then she smiled. A real one this time. Small, tired, but real. "Thanks, James." He walked away, unsure if he had helped or just made things more complicated. But something inside him had shifted. He could not let this go. Later that night, as he scrolled through his phone, he opened Ellie's social media profile. Everything seemed perfect. Laughing photos, happy captions, holidays, friends. But James had seen behind the curtain. He noticed a post from 3 weeks ago. A family picture. Ellie, her younger brother, and 2 adults. The caption read, "Family weekend in Cornwall. Love these people to bits." But something was off. The man in the photo, presumably her father, had his hand on Ellie's shoulder. She was smiling, but her eyes were tense. James zoomed in, trying to figure out what was bothering him. And then it hit him. In every photo with her father, Ellie looked uncomfortable. It was subtle, but now that he had seen it, he could not unsee it. Something was wrong in the Harper house, and James was going to find out what. The following days felt like walking on a tightrope. James couldn't shake the image of Ellie's forced smiles and the unease in her eyes. He became more observant, more tuned into the silences between her words, the pauses in her laughter. She remained the same in front of others, cheerful, witty, always the one to lighten the mood. But James saw the strain in her smile, the way her fingers twitched when someone mentioned home. He began piecing together fragments. Ellie would always change the subject when family came up. She never invited anyone over, never talked about her parents unless prompted. Her younger brother, Freddie, was in year 10. James managed to speak to one of Freddie's classmates, posing as if he just needed help for a school project. Freddie Harper, the classmate had said. Quiet kid. Bit of a ghost, really. Always seems scared of something. That word, scared, echoed in James's mind. Back at school, he tried to get closer to Ellie without scaring her off. They'd talk briefly after lessons or during lunch breaks. Nothing too intense. He wanted her to know he was around, but not watching. He didn't want to make her feel cornered. Then came Thursday. It was late afternoon, the sky overcast and heavy with gray. James stayed behind after school to help the music teacher with a tech issue in the auditorium. As he passed the corridor near the staff offices, he heard raised voices. He paused, hidden just out of sight. You can't just ignore it, Paul, a woman's voice snapped. She's withdrawn. She flinches when people raise their voices. I'm not ignoring it, Miriam, a man said calmly. But there's no proof. And unless Ellie says something herself, we can't push. James didn't breathe. Ellie.
They were talking about Ellie.
I know what I saw, the woman continued, voice lower now. And I don't trust that man. Her father gives me a bad feeling. There was silence. Then a door closed. Footsteps faded. James stood still for a long moment, heart racing. He had confirmation now. Even the teachers suspected something. The next morning, he approached Ellie during break. Walk with me, he asked. She looked surprised but nodded. They wandered down the side path behind the sports hall. No one ever came here. It was quiet, lined with bare trees and ivy-covered walls. James stopped. Ellie, I overheard something yesterday. Teachers talking. About you. About your dad. Her face froze. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, he added quickly. But they're worried too. You don't have to hide anymore. Ellie's lips parted. Her hands trembled at her sides. For a moment, James thought she would run. Instead, she whispered, they don't know anything. Then tell me, he said gently. Silence. Then, a single tear rolled down her cheek. You wouldn't believe me if I did. I will, James said. Ellie took a shaky breath. He's not what people think. My dad at home, he's different. James waited. He controls everything, she continued, voice barely audible. Where I go, who I speak to, how long I'm out. If I mess up, even slightly, it turns into shouting. Sometimes worse. And Mom? She just pretends it's not happening. James felt his stomach tighten. Ellie wiped her face quickly. I can't talk to anyone. If he finds out, I don't know what he'd do. You don't have to go through this alone, James said. Let me help. Her eyes searched his. Then finally she nodded. Just once. It was the start of something dangerous. But James had made up his mind. James couldn't sleep. That night, every creak of the house, every gust of wind brushing against the window, jolted him awake. Ellie's words kept replaying in his mind. He controls everything. Sometimes worse. It was the first time she'd opened up, and the weight of her confession pressed heavily on his chest. He knew now this wasn't just teenage mood swings or a rough patch at home. This was something much darker. The next day, James spent his lunch in the school library, scrolling through websites on safeguarding, abuse reporting, and school protocol. Everything said the same thing. If someone was in danger, you report it. But he also knew Ellie's greatest fear wasn't the pain. It was being found out. She had made him promise not to speak to anyone. He needed help, but without betraying her. That evening, James rode his bike out of town. The air was cold, and his breath came out in misty puffs. He pedaled fast, as if trying to outrun the helplessness clawing at him. He arrived outside the small cottage of Mrs. Langley, his old form tutor. She'd retired last year, but James remembered how kind she'd always been, sharp-eyed, no nonsense, but with a heart made of gold. She answered the door with a surprised smile. "James Matthews, what brings you here?" "I need advice," he said. "Just advice. About a friend." She invited him in, made tea the way she always had, with too much milk and a sugar cube at the bottom. Once settled, James began, carefully choosing his words. "It's a girl at school.
She told me something.
About home. Her dad." He looked up. "I can't say who, but it's serious. She's scared. I want to help, but if I tell someone, she might never trust anyone again." Mrs. Langley watched him closely, quiet for a moment. "She told you because she trusts you," she said. "That's a powerful thing. But sometimes, helping someone means doing what's right, not what's easy." James nodded slowly. "She's been through enough. If she finds out I broke that trust, she might be angry," Mrs. Langley said gently. "But she'll be safe. And one day, she might thank you for it." James rode home under the cloak of night, his mind battling itself. By the time he reached his house, the decision had been made. The next morning, he left an anonymous note in Mr. Hughes's office, the school's safeguarding lead. He wrote everything he knew. Ellie's fear, her father's control, the bruises hidden beneath her jumpers, the way she avoided going home. He didn't sign his name. He watched from a distance all day, trying to focus in lessons while waiting for something to happen. But nothing did. Ellie moved through the halls like always, her laughter carefully painted on. It wasn't until the final bell that he saw it. A member of staff pulled Ellie aside, guiding her gently towards the pastoral office. Ellie hesitated, eyes darting around, but she followed. James's chest tightened. The trap had been set. He prayed he hadn't just made things worse. Days passed like a slow, heavy tide. James kept an eye on Ellie from afar, but her smile seemed thinner, her steps more hesitant. At school, whispers started. Someone had reported something. Ellie avoided the corridors where the gossip gathered, her eyes flicking nervously to every shadow. One afternoon, James found her alone by the old oak tree in the school grounds. "Ellie," he said softly. She looked up, startled, then nodded. "I heard," she whispered. James sat beside her. "Are you all right?" he asked, though he knew the answer wasn't simple. Ellie swallowed hard. "It's worse now. Dad's angry. He watches me even more. I'm scared to be at home." James's heart clenched. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't want this to happen." Ellie shook her head. "No, you did the right thing. I'm scared." The days that followed were a blur of tension. School counselors got involved, social workers arrived, and Ellie was offered a safe place to stay. But the biggest battle wasn't outside. It was the silent war raging inside her. James tried to be there, to be the anchor in her storm, but he felt helpless. How could he fix something so broken? One evening, Ellie sent him a message. "Thank you," she wrote, "for not giving up on me." And in that moment, James understood, sometimes courage was simply showing up. The following weeks were a whirlwind of change. Ellie moved into a small foster home not far from school. It was quiet, safe, but unfamiliar. James visited often, bringing books, stories, and a steady presence. He noticed how Ellie's laughter, though fragile, started to return. Yet, shadows lingered. Ellie confided in James about her fears, the nightmares, the loneliness, and the heavy weight of her father's threats. One chilly afternoon, as the sun dipped low over London's rooftops, Ellie whispered, "I don't want to be scared anymore." James nodded. "You're stronger than you think." They made a pact, to face the darkness together, to hold on to hope no matter how faint. But just as things seemed to settle, a call from Ellie's father shattered the fragile peace. He wanted to see her. Ellie's hands trembled. Could she face him? Could James protect her? The next chapter was about to unfold, but how, They did not yet know. Ellie stood outside the cafe, where her father had asked to meet. The busy street buzzed with Londoners hurrying home, unaware of the tension tightening inside her chest. James was beside her, calm but alert. When her father arrived, he looked different. Older, wearier, with eyes that held regrets Ellie had never seen before. He didn't apologize. Instead, he spoke of mistakes and misunderstandings, of wanting a second chance. Ellie listened, torn between anger and the small hope flickering in her heart. James watched quietly, ready to step in if things turned dark. After a long silence, Ellie said, "I'm not the little girl you left behind. I'm still scared, but I'm learning to be brave." Her father nodded slowly. The meeting ended with no promises, but a door left slightly open. Ellie walked away feeling lighter, though unsure what the future held. Ellie's thoughts were restless as she walked through Hyde Park. The autumn leaves crunched beneath her feet, a reminder that some things must change to make way for new growth. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. It read, "Be careful who you trust. Not all wounds heal as they seem." A chill ran down her spine. James noticed her sudden stillness. "Who was it?" he asked gently. Ellie showed him the message, her fingers trembling. They both knew this was no coincidence. Someone from her father's past was watching. Ellie's resolve hardened. She needed to uncover the truth before it was too late. Ellie and James spent the evening piecing together clues from her father's old files. In a dusty box, they found letters hinting at a secret deal made years ago. The letters spoke of betrayal, money, and a warning not to trust certain people in London's business circles. Ellie's heart sank as she realized her father's troubles were deeper than she had imagined. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. James went to answer it, but no one was there. Only a small envelope lay on the doorstep. Ellie picked it up and opened it slowly. Inside was a photograph of her father, smiling, but with someone standing behind him in the shadows. Her hands shook. Who was this mysterious figure? The past was closing in, and the truth was waiting to be uncovered. Ellie stared at the photograph, her mind racing to recognize the shadowy figure. With James's support, she decided to confront the people involved in her father's past. They visited the old business offices mentioned in the letters, now abandoned and dusty. Inside, they found evidence of deceit and betrayal that explained her father's sudden downfall. Ellie felt a mix of anger and relief. At last, she understood the truth behind her father's struggles. With this knowledge, she resolved to rebuild her life and honor her father's memory. The pain was still there, but so was hope. Together, Ellie and James walked out into the London rain, ready for whatever the future held.